We're going to go ahead and recording. Okay, and then we're going to get started here. James is going to read the script. Thank you, James.
All right. I'm James. I'm creating a sober world by the grace of God and the fellowship of the saints in recovery. Welcome to Creating a Sober World. This is a book study of nothing, a sober discussion of being and non-being. Let's start out our meeting today with a moment of silence, followed by our opening prayer. Almighty God,
to you all hearts are open. All desires known. No secrets your head. Cleanse the thoughts of our hearts by the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. We perfectly love you and worthily magnify your holy name. Through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Creating a Sober World is a fellowship of men and women who have each taken responsibility for sharing our experience, strength, and hope with a world that is addicted to everything. The only requirement for CASW membership is the willingness to be nothing. There are no dues or fees for creating a Sober World membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. CASW is not allied to any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes except for the cause of Christ, who first became nothing by emptying himself out and becoming nothing on our behalf. Our primary purpose is to be nothing, one day at a time, and to bring the world to the nothing that we have found. All About Nothing, the co-founder of the Alcoholics Anonymous program, said this in regard to being nothing. At the hospital, I was separated from alcohol for the last time. Treatment seemed wise, for I showed signs of delirium tremens. There I humbly offered myself to God as I then understood him to do with me as he would. I placed myself unreservedly under his care and direction. I admitted for the first time that of myself I was nothing. St. John of the Cross wrote, to reach satisfaction in all, desire is possession in nothing. To come to possess all, desire the possession of nothing. To arrive at being all, desire to be nothing. In popular 20th century Western literature, British American poet T.S. Eliot identified with nothing. I had been freed from the self that pretends to be something, pretends to be someone, and in becoming no one, I begin to live. It is worthwhile dying to find out what life is. The Apostle Paul said that if a man thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. We identify with a passage from St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians, for it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise and will bring to nothing the understanding of the prudent. 1 Corinthians 1:39. Our practice. We practice the 12 steps in all our affairs and are governed as a community by the 12 traditions, first developed by Alcoholics Anonymous. We gather in face-to-face and in virtual meetings hosted on Zoom. Our meetings are listed online at soberworld.com. The meeting is a study and discussion of the book, Nothing, a sober discussion of being and non-being. We will read and discuss the book until 12:35 and then open the room for timed 5-minute shares until 12:55.
Okay, thanks. And what we'll do is we'll probably go for 20 minutes, and then we'll take a little halftime break. We want to kind of get ourselves, kind of in kind of lined up with the way people run meetings, and then we'll take our 5-minute shares and double dip shares if we need to, because we really want to make sure that we're using this time not so much to study the book, but we're doing the Credence of World Culture, and we've already read through the book one time, and now we're going back and we're reading the book just like any kind of 12-step meeting would do, with the idea that we're going to use the book as a kind of a way for us to talk about our spiritual growth and our spiritual identity, and how we're beginning to understand how we can live as people who are totally God guided and God controlled. So anyway, that's what we're up to. Who'd like to read the book? Who wants to read the book? Nothing. Who's willing to
I'm
read?
happy to read the book.
Okay, Gary, go ahead. What we did was we read through the first part here where we're talking about the being nothing. We talked about St. John of the Cross, T.S. Eliot, and his idea of being nothing. And Bill Wilson admitted that he was nothing. I actually need to, because that's not that sentence ends right there. The next sentence is, without him I was lost, is the next sentence. By myself I was nothing. Okay, so then go ahead there, Eric, and just read there for a few minutes, and I'll let you know when we need to stop.
Okie doke. The use of the word nothing by Bill suggests a link between being sober and his identification with being nothing. Whether this is justified or not, the linkage of being sober with being nothing is an assumption upon which the following discussion is grounded. The validity of this connection will be left to the reader to judge. A search of online dictionaries and encyclopedias uncovers only the most superficial definition of the word sober, which is so often used by philosophers without ever being defined. Plato, for one, uses the word soberly in describing the attributes of an aspiring student of his academy. Whatever his occupation...
God bless you. Gesundheit. I need to say.
Yeah.
I need to say it in German, because
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that'd be I guess I think that's right. Whatever his occupation may be, above everything and always he holds fast to philosophy and to the discipline that best makes him apt at learning and remembering, and capable of reasoning soberly with himself. Dr. Charles Taylor, at the end of Sources of the Self, his inquiry into the crisis which confronts the self in our postmodern culture, said, "What we need is a sober, scientific-minded, secular humanism."
And I'm just going to stop right there because, I read through Charles Taylor's Sources of the Self. It was not an easy book to read through. In fact, I actually had to skip a lot of that stuff in the middle with those various European philosophers, because it just got too deep into the weeds of, trying to explain, whatever, probably Hegel and Kant and Hegel and all those guys. In the end, he's saying, concludes that we need to do something about the fact that Western culture is, something's happened to the self. And basically, what I'm saying with Credence of the World is a place, and I'm seeing it with UA, that the 12-step culture gives you a place, a context that's really kind of miraculous, because in the 12-step context, we are not living in either the religious. When I say religious, even Christianity has been overrun by what I call Neoplatonism. I mean, even people who claim to be Christians are really Neoplatonists. They're really, you might say, Cartesians. I think, therefore I am. In other words, most people think that they're the disembodied ego I in their foreheads, and they don't understand that they're nothing, and they just need to listen to God tell them what to do. That's what I think being sober is to be nothing and let God tell us what to do, and give us the power to do it. And that's the 12-step conversation. And I don't think, I think we're the first bunch of people to actually kind of tease out what the philosophy of 12 steps really is. And it's an exciting adventure. And of course, this hitting bottom on UA thing, the UA context is just more powerful than the AA context, because the AA context is about dealing with alcohol, and the UA context is about dealing with underbeing. And of course, they don't understand quite, that they stumbled into this, but it's an amazing space. And as screwed up as it is, it's still an amazing context. So anyway, I'll just stop right there. You pulled your book out. You want to confirm something?
No, I just was looking at the page that we're at because I was going to say about this quotation of Charles Taylor. I thought his take on it was a Christian take, no? In Sources of the Self.
Well, it is. Charles Taylor's Roman Catholic philologist at McGill University. He's now, of course, 90 years old, and I thought I'd send the book to him, but he's not receiving any kind of transmissions or anything. He's
Right, right.
got to where
I'm
he's not
curious
interested.
why he's the quotation we have of his says we need a sober secular humanism. Didn't it say that? Sort of resurrecting. Remember?
Well, I mean, it's I mean, even though people are Roman Catholics, and they're teaching a Roman Catholic university, I mean, it's easy to not quite know what it is that we need. I mean, so he's saying, that was his kind of conclusion, and where's it at? Oh, hey, I'm in the wrong spot here. I need to get that out of the way here and go back to
Well, it's
yeah.
on page 8 of the earlier version.
So we need a sober, scientific-minded secular humanism. It's only because if you would read Charles Taylor, you'd realize he is deeply into trying to explain philosophically what's going on. As is, I mean, I'm not saying most Roman Catholics, but Roman Catholicism, I'm not trying to pick on it, has been heavily involved in the philosophical since, I don't know, probably the last, 1,000 years. Because the philosophers, they came in, and even from the time of Augustine, from the time of Augustine, you have your apologists, and we already say that later on in the book. Augustine, what's the other ones that I said were apologists? Justin Martyr was making an apology, is what he was doing. He was apologia, defense of Christianity using Greek thought. And also Origen. They were all Platonists before they came to Christ. And so they naturally tend to bring in what they think they already know about the sense of being, and they don't understand that Christianity is not Platonism. And I'm going to make the case even stronger in this Eating Bottom of UA book, and it's only because the context is so powerful. And then when I come back and I'm going to do Yet Not I, in other words, Yet Not I is how to achieve the achievement of pursuit of perfection, Christian perfection. I'll go into detail, and then maybe in Credence to the World, I'll just say the same thing all over again, but even more clearly and more concisely and more to the point. I think by then the conversation will be very clear, and we will definitely have. By the way, Charlie, that's a lovely scene behind you. That's lovely. That's great.
Is that Africa?
I don't know. It's lovely.
Well, you're muted, my man, Charlie.
Well, I'm reading his lips. He
Oh,
says,
never
"Leave
mind.
me
That's just a
alone."
picture I took in Colorado last
Oh.
year.
Okay.
I thought it was the Serengeti.
No, it's just
That's not a leopard right behind you?
no, it's just sunset or sunrise in Colorado.
Well,
Anyway.
I had the same experience, George. I started reading the Charles Taylor book, and he quickly gets pretty heavy. So I couldn't finish it either. It's,
Well,
too much.
I read. First of all, I was interested. I'll read a secular age. Forget about it. I could get maybe a chapter or two into it. He's just so deep. He's just so deep. And of course, he's well respected, sweet guy, lovely man. But he goes so deep into the weeds with philosophy. And see, philosophy is just it's like a never ending jungle, and it's all nonsense. It's all built upon an assumption that there's being and becoming, and it's not even based upon a solid foundation of what we're doing here. And so no matter what they say, they still haven't figured anything out. So Charles Taylor is saying, he knows there's something is needed. So he's saying that what's needed is, so here Martin Heidegger, I think, was Roman Catholic. His father was a sacristan at the church there where he grew up. And so I think he wanted to go into the the monastery as a young man, but something caught his attention about this very issue of being and non-being, and he began a lifelong pursuit in this. So Martin Heidegger, he's once you dig down to Heidegger, you realize he's a Christian, but he's trying to be philosophically respected, I guess. Keep going.
Likewise, Martin Heidegger used the word sober in one of his final lectures in his lifelong project of finding the meaning of being. Perhaps there is a thinking that is more sober-minded than the incessant frenzy of rationalization and the intoxicating quality of cybernetics. One might aver that it is precisely this intoxication that is extremely irrational. Perhaps there is thinking outside of the distinction of rational and irrational, more sober-minded still than scientific technology, more sober-minded and hence removed without effect, yet having its own necessity.
Well, I think that's worth commenting on. Some Heidegger saying that, and he's onto something, because the whole thing that Plato does. Listen, Plato, he's an aristocrat. He doesn't like the democracy. The democracy has forced Socrates to take the hemlock, to kill himself. I mean, Socrates could have escaped, but he was too proud, and too proud of his philosophy to. He needed to, on principle, go ahead and take the hemlock and kill himself. And so Plato, he was even he was going to join the tyrants. In other words, Sparta came over and took over Athens, and they put in a governorship of this, I think, the 12 tyrants or the 7 tyrants, and Plato thought he should be a tyrant. He was joined the tyrants. Of course, the tyrant is not it's got tyrant's got a very bad name now, but it was never such a good idea. But it's, the strong and the powerful will run the country. So Plato's idea was that he would be able to develop a communist utopian tyranny headed up by the philosophers, the lovers of wisdom. That's what the whole thing's about. And so, and the thing that I was going to say, and I right now in the book I wrote this, he went off to to a Pythagorean community. He became enamored by the Pythagoreans, how they ran things. They had a very tight community, and there were a bunch of geometers, and they thought the absolute truth was in numbers and geometry, and so he bought into that. And of course, Pythagoras he thought he had many past lives, that at one time he'd been, I don't know, one of these great people from the past, and I don't know, Achilles or something. And so Plato, and also is in the book of the Republic, he has his near-death account. So he thought there was this true world and this world of appearances, and he really is a Pythagorean. And what he does, he tries to turn us all into Pythagoreans. He says that if you want to enter into a school of philosophy, you have to study. He said, let no one who enter in here into his, academia, no one can enter into his academy who has not become a geometer. Let no one who's not a geometer enter. So you have to be a geometer to enter into to Plato's academy. Well, so then we have an educational system that's largely grounded in mathematics and geometry and trigonometry and all these things. Nothing wrong with that, but we've raised up a culture of scientists and engineers, and so they've done great things. But yet, in terms of running the culture, you don't want to be run by geometers. We have these philosophers that run our schools now, and our colleges, and even our seminaries, and they're Pythagoreans. They're not really Christians. They're not really philosophers. They're caught up in this madness. How are you doing with this, Charlie? You okay with this? Where we're at with this?
Well, I'm just listening. I don't know why we're going into that so much because that's not what we're about, I don't think. And all of those things that they're doing is just, to me, is just trying to define things for themselves, so that people will better understand whatever it is they're trying to say. So anyway,
Well,
that's where I
yeah,
am.
yeah. Well, what I'm saying is this is exactly what I've done. That's why I asked Charlie, because philosophy is done for. Um, Plato, basically, Heidegger at the end of his life admits that philosophy doesn't work, and we'll see very clearly. We also understand that science is not working; it's collapsing, and the reason why science is collapsing is that science is built upon the godly, everlasting truth that numbers are true and they're real and they have real truth in them. And the truth about it is that mathematics is just a tautology. There's no truth in mathematics. Mathematics works very nicely to help you do different kinds of problems, but there's no ultimate truth in mathematics. And this is what Bertrand Russell discovered in the first part of the early part of the 20th century, and Kurt Gödel went along with it. He proved that mathematics, there's no truth in mathematics, and he proved it mathematically. And so nobody knows what a number is, and yet science is basing the idea that we live in an infinite multiverse based upon the idea that mathematics tends to indicate to them that we live in an infinite multiverse, and there's no evidence for anything out beyond the edge of the Big Bang, and up beyond the edge, there's nothing out there. And of course, we call that nothing God. And so, but scientists don't. I mean, the mathematicians and scientists don't like the idea of nothing, and that's one of the reasons why I'm writing the book. So you kind of get where I'm going with this, Charlie. That science and philosophy
Well,
can offer us no truth that's going to help us. Nothing.
well, and the when you get to the bottom line, numbers just don't count. If you can catch my pun.
Well, numbers never did count, but mathematicians tries to use numbers to count, and so mathematicians don't count. The numbers just do what they do. I mean, I'm just saying, Charlie.
Yeah, I understand.
I know
What
that must be
what
an
we're trying to, this thing about the sober though is just about trying to use something, some word, use a word to say what people are saying. We need to have a sober minded. Well, what does that
well,
mean? It means
well,
not
okay.
intoxicated, I suppose, but what does that mean? So we're all intoxicated in one way or another.
Well, this space is an interesting space, Charlie, because this space is not about meaning.
Yeah. Okay.
This
I can get that.
we're not doing meaning here. Okay, we're creating a world. We're creating a conversation that is not addicted to meaning. You don't have to have any meaning to do this. I mean, to understand what we're doing here. You get what I'm saying? I mean, nobody knows what sobriety means. I mean, Eric is sober and I'm sober, but well,
Are
and
you
so I'm
real?
saying,
Are we really sober? That's the point I'm trying to make. You know, we're not addicted to, or we're not intoxicated with alcohol. We're not intoxicated with some kind of drug. We're not, okay. That can be scientifically shown or demonstrated or proven or whatever. But the bottom line, it's the things that concern me are when people get intoxicated with power. You know, that's where you get your Hitlers and your
sure.
Putins and
Well,
your Trumps for all that matter too. You know, and your Bidens, all those guys. And so anyway, that's just kind of where I am. A sober world really to me is a hard thing to understand, but I have a
well,
feel for it.
it's not something you understand. A sober world is something you
It's
create.
exactly right.
You create it.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And I'm not sure that I'm much of a creator, but I know the creator has to be a definition of being sober,
Well,
or else
but so
sober
you're
doesn't
but
have
still,
any
but see
meaning.
what you're addicted to put it into a mean. So you're
Yeah,
addicted to
yes,
this thought process, Charlie, the way you communicate it is you communicate in meanings. And so one of the things is that we tend to be addicted to power, pleasure, and meaning. And why we can't show people the way out of this is some people say, well, what does it mean? I go, well, you got to really, you got to give up the addiction, the attachment to meaning in order to be sober. Because see, if any man is in Christ, he's a new creation. So Charlie, you are a new creation. So then as a new creation, you get to come forth as your new creation, guided by the Creator, and reach out and bring other people into the conversation that you're having. And if you try to explain to them what it is, they won't get it. In terms of, if you try to say, well, what they're doing is, let me tell you what it means, and go, they won't get this. You have to speak it in a way that brings them into it, in a way that they can own it or buy into it without it going into the addiction module, which is power, pleasure, and meaning. And so that's what you're kind of like, I don't know how I wrote it this way, but it turns out this is the way it needed to be written. You get what I'm saying, Charlie? And thank you for your feedback.
I see what you're saying, but in the end, it all turns right back around on itself. But that's okay, because there's no other. To me, there's no other way to go. To me, it's kind of like, is there a reality? Is there anything that's real? And I don't know what that means exactly, but I assume that for me, it means that God is the one thing that's real. And so all these guys are trying to prove that he is or isn't.
Exactly, Charlie. The only thing that is real is Jesus Christ.
Amen.
He's the creator and he's the creation. And so, but if you depart from that reality, because all the rest of this is just an illusion.
Yeah, I get that, and where I am is there aren't words to help to describe to people what I understand about that.
Well,
because I don't understand it with words.
Well, there's things that you'll know about this as we work through this. You'll come to know something, but it won't be something you understand. You'll know it like you know it. You
I understand that. I know that. Yeah. My life has all been coming to that point, George. That's what.
Okay, so anyway,
that makes me happy.
But you're not the only one who's addicted to meaning.
Oh no.
Okay, I mean, there's lots of people who are addicted. Others, they want to say, well, what it means, and that's the problem with Western culture. Even Christianity has been so preached in terms of the meaning of it that people don't have a direct experience of the Creator, who is all in all and the only truth there is. And people want to get into their own power, pleasure, and meaning things. They get going with it. Anyway, I'll let you mute here for a second, Charlie, and we'll keep going with this. Okay, Eric, you want to pick up? And thank you much, Charlie. That was great. By the way, what we'll do is we'll take a little halftime break. We'll take a little halftime break. There's no dues or fees for creating a Sober World membership. We're self-supporting through our own contributions. I thank you. I thank all those of you who support us. You can support Creating Sober World by going to our PayPal link at www.soberworld.com. And any little bit helps, because this does cost us to put this on. Our website costs the same. I'm going to be buying a bunch of these books to give away to all you guys and send out to you guys. And so when that happens, I'm going to be sending them to you, and so you can read them. The Hitting Bottom in UA book, because it's a good book, even if you're not involved in UA. It's a great booklet. Maybe give your friends who might be under earners. Anybody else have any announcements before they go to Creating a Sober World? Any announcements before they go to Creating a Sober World? Many months ago, back when Raquel was active with us, I was all in the role. We were going to have a World Services Conference, and we may begin to think about that again. World Services Conference here in Tampa, but there's still just a handful of us, so we probably won't do that. But eventually, we're going to have we'll have a get together, but then we can do it on Zoom anyway. We probably, we don't need to have a business meeting in this little fellowship, but in the Hitting Bottom and UA fellowship, we will be doing business meetings to help people kind of write the script in that fellowship. Anyway, we don't any announcements before we go to Creating a Sober World? Questions? Okay. Ready, Eric?
I'm ready. Let's see. So that's this word. We're still talking about the word sober. This word is also used on several occasions in the New Testament as soberly. For I say, through the grace given to me, to everyone who is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, as God has dealt to each one a measure of faith. Romans 12:3-4. And for the grace of God that bringeth salvation hath appeared to all men, teaching us that denying ungodliness
I'm
and
sorry.
worldly
I'm
lust.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, where'd he go?
Where'd he go?
Maybe other direction.
Oh goodness, am I in the right?
Well, I think it was on page 9. Let's see. Well,
You were.
I think our pagination changed a little. I don't have the hardcover in front of me.
No,
We are looking on page 9. Yeah.
I just hit the button and I got scooted up too far. Hang on, here we go. Okay, there we are.
There you go. And for the grace of God that bringeth salvation hath appeared to all men, teaching us that denying ungodliness and worldly lusts, we should live soberly, righteously, and godly in this present world. Titus 2:11-12. And I forgot all about Titus. Let's see. In none of these uses of the word are we offered any clue as to the definition of sober. I will pause here to answer a few questions which you, the reader, would be expected to be asking prior to investing any more of your time in this discussion of nothing. What qualifies me as the author to write about nothing? What is my motivation, and why am I coming at nothing in the way that I am? First, my qualifications and the reason. In 1986 and 88, I went to the former Soviet Union with a group of recovering alcoholics and addicts. We had been invited by Premier Gorbachev to introduce the Alcoholics Anonymous program to that country, which for almost 1,000 years has suffered from an immense problem with alcoholism. In those days of restricted diplomatic contact, we connected with the Soviets through some researchers from California's Esalen Institute, who still maintained lines of communication with their peers in Russia. Our trips were organized by the San Francisco-based Center for U.S.-USSR Initiatives. They named our traveling groups Creating a Sober World. After these 2 trips, I began to ask myself if there might not be some strategy by which the principles of addiction recovery might be shared with the world at large. This was a huge idea, but one which I subsequently learned both the founder of AA and the man whose group dynamics shaped its founding, Frank Bookman, believed could and in time would come to pass. I resolved then to make it my own life project. I did not know, and I immediately realized that I might never know how to create a sober world. But I would embrace this vision as a challenge much bigger than myself. It would be a problem so big that I could never outgrow it. I knew that my new purpose would surely humble me and change the trajectory of my life for the better. I would create a sober world. Not only would it be my purpose, but I soon realized it was becoming my identity. More details of this story can be found in my first book in the Creating a Sober World series, Absolutely Sober, A History, Principles, and Practice of the Destruction of Self-Centeredness. I spent the next 30 years working in prisons and treatment centers with thousands of men with addiction problems, all the while pursuing my larger purpose of creating a sober world. I have enjoyed seeing many men and women get well who might not have done so had I not had such a huge commitment to understanding the many issues involved in addiction recovery. As is invariably the case in this type of work in helping others, I have been the one most changed. Creating a Sober World has, as I suspected, though I did not have a word for it, then brought me to nothing.
I just will stop right there. Thank you for reading, Eric. And that's what my I wrote the Absolutely Sober book because the men at the Salvation Army, the counselors, and they were generally African American men up in Washington D.C. They were sweet guys. They didn't quite understand how it was that I was putting the 12-step conversation together with the Christian theology. I mean, they were interested, but they weren't that interested. But I told them anyway I would write the book, and as it turned out, I wrote the book, and they didn't really. Some of them didn't read it, but that's okay because the book. Some of the Salvation Army officers I sent it to liked it, and they thought it was great. They gave me 5 stars. And people have read it, and the fellow here in Tampa bought them by the case for a while. and we give them away to the guys at the center. In the back of that book, the conclusion was that we needed to have a Creating Soul World conversation, and but anyway, there's a lot of things in that that whole section there that I'm creating. Basically, what I am is I am nothing. That's how I came to nothing. Is I came to realize that I'm nothing. Of course, I didn't come to know myself to be nothing. I'll just put my timer here. I'll go for four more minutes. I didn't start out really knowing myself to be nothing as I do now when I started the book, but the more I dug into, the more I realized that, going back to Plato, he had been tricked by the goddess of the underworld, Persephone. Persephone said there's being and becoming, but there's no non-being. Don't say that word. There is no non-being. And so nothing doesn't exist, basically, she said. Nothing doesn't exist. Of course, then there's this back here, the nothing, and you can say, well, it doesn't exist, but it's definitely there or out there somewhere. Of course, that's God. The nothing in God would be the same thing, that God creates it all out of nothing. And God is not a thing. He's beyond words, and nobody knows what he is. And, but he doesn't have to at all resemble the things he's created. Even Jesus says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. I mean, Jesus is the appearance and the revelation of God. Without Jesus, God, there's no revelation of God. God reveals himself in Jesus Christ. And other than that, God is, you could say that. People say, well, does God exist? No, it's so them, God doesn't exist. The Greek philosophical concept of the word existence does not capture God. That word is not big enough to handle God. Does God exist? No. Well, as long as you think nothing exists, then God exists. If you think that nothing doesn't exist, then you can say that God doesn't exist. But we're caught up. We're in bondage to a trick. And this is, Charlie, this is the answer to the Western philosophical dilemma, is it's all trying to explain the trick that was played on us by Persephone. That's all of philosophy and all of science. All this nonsense in which we live is just a trick that was played on us by the goddess of the underworld. Of course, we know that Christianity, the Judeo-Christian religion, is a working out of the solution to the fact that the devil, the serpent, the diabolos, came along and asked Eve this question: has God really said? Has God really said? So then along comes what? Duality. There's God. God said, and then comes along, did God really say? So then you suddenly have doubt in your mind. You got duality, and then eventually Adam succumbs to duality. And so he enters into the world of good and evil. And it's all because he was tricked by the god of the underworld, Satan. But then he shows up again. And for the Greeks as Persephone. Persephone is the goddess of the underworld who executes the curses laid upon the souls of men in the underworld. She's not a good character. And this Apollo, this god of this Parmenides, high priest of Apollo, who takes some acid and goes into a trance and goes to the underworld where it runs into Persephone. And she gives him the contents of this poem. And Plato takes the poem and turns it into Western philosophy. It's all nonsense. It's just absolutely insanity. The whole thing is insane. And thank God we're creating a sane world, a sober world. This is the kingdom of heaven, in a sense. We're creating it all out of nothing. We're creating it all out of nothing. Anyway, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Who wants to share next? You want to go, Eric? I'll give you 5 minutes.
Well, yeah, I'll share. So, Eric, creating a sober world. This is Christmas is rushing upon us. I don't know why so quick this year. We're not doing much Christmas shopping, and maybe I'm getting older, or it's more likely that the kids are getting less involved with us. But in any event, it just seems to be jumping up faster than expected. But I have been taking the occasion to be reading some of the histories about Jesus and the early church. I'm one of those people that I think a scholarly quest for the historical Jesus is largely impossible in the sense, well, it's theologically illegitimate in the sense that it substitutes worldly discussions for faith. On the other hand, as a practical matter or as a personal matter, I find it very interesting to read these historical essays about what the world was like back then, and and also in the context of our group here, we talk a lot about the first century Christian church and all that was going on then. It's there's obviously a ton of stuff to read on it, but it's kind of what I'm doing at this time of the year to prepare for Christmas, and it's always a pleasure to be coming to this group here because this is the main time that I talk about Jesus Christ. Although I have been meeting more people out here who have Jesus Christ as their higher power. You know, Charlie, in AA, everybody picks a higher power, but out in California, it's not usually Jesus Christ. Although in North Carolina, it usually was. But out here, I'm meeting more people. I say Jesus Christ, and a couple people come up and say, "Hey, me too." And it's funny. It does remind me of first century Christian church. We're not quite persecuted here in California, but we certainly feel persecuted. We're in the minority, and yet, as always, you know, we're not quite at the point of having house churches, but it's getting there, and it might not be a bad thing, really. I mean, it's I try to be optimistic, even as the world is crumbling in so many social ways. I do prefer an optimistic outlook and assume that God is in charge and that this could have a good outcome. If it drives people into house churches, that might be better than the churches that we're seeing. So who knows? In any event, it's interesting to be starting the Nothing book again and going back to the beginning. It's a little bit like everything else, the big book of AA, the Bible, anything in history, and all of philosophy. Every time I approach it again, I learn something new. So and that's about all I have right now. You know, it was interesting to hear this mention of secular humanism from Taylor. That's a term we don't hear very much anymore. Everybody talked about secular humanism back in the days I was in college, and over the last 20 years, it's been almost that concept, whatever it meant, has been almost completely supplanted by this new concept of wokeism or postmodern or whatever the new catechism in school is. I use that word advisedly. The new catechism is not the Catholic catechism. The new catechism is to be intersectional, etc. And so nobody uses that expression, secular humanism, anymore. I did a double take. I said, now what did that mean again back in the day? And nowadays, I'm not sure what their complaint is. I think their complaint is the humanism part, but I'm not sure. In any event, I don't want to babble, so I'm gonna sign off. It's good to see you guys.
Okay. Okay. Is that, are you
This is Dan McGuire. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to say hi to Eric. He invited me to this group. This is my first meeting, and I wasn't aware that it was 12 Eastern, and I'm on Central Time, so I'm late coming in.
Oh, that's great. Who are you? You mind introducing yourself and say who you are?
I'm sorry, what's that?
What's your name?
Dan McGuire.
Well, you're sure welcome, Dan. Thank you for coming.
Well, thanks for welcoming me. And next time I'll be punctual.
Oh, that's great. How did you find out about us?
Eric Schultz informed me.
Eric Schultz. Oh, that's great, Dan.
Yeah,
that's great.
Who would that be? Yeah.
Well, welcome.
Dan.
And
So we have our gratitude meeting tomorrow. You could come in tomorrow at the punctual time and
yeah,
share
I will.
5 things you're grateful for.
Yeah, and by the way, I tried to log in on the internet and it said I didn't have the correct passcode.
Which one did you use, Dan?
The same one I used on the phone, the meeting ID number, the 456-169-4767.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then you
And
did
for
type in
whatever reason, that didn't work.
CASW. CASW is the passcode.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah,
CASW?
capital CASW. Yeah, that's the passcode. It's in. It should be in the. Maybe he didn't send you the full link. Dan, what I'll do is I'll make sure you also that you get a copy of the. I post these videos on the internet, and I'll send you a copy of the meeting so you can go back over it. Dan McGuire, is that it?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, George, I didn't send Dan the link at all. He went in through the website. So we'll
Oh,
have
yeah?
to check on the website that the CASW is.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll make sure I do that. Well, anyway, thank you for coming. And did you hear anything that interested you?
Yeah, I heard, well, I don't know how much of Eric's soliloquy I heard, but I heard quite a bit of it. It was interesting.
Well, I
I do understand.
I think you're the Dan
I
I've been
do.
praying for. I knew that he was sponsoring a Dan, and I've been praying for his Dan. So you must be the Dan I've been praying for. That's interesting.
Well, no, I haven't been sponsoring Dan yet. He hasn't started in the AA program yet. He's starting with CASW instead.
Oh, isn't that interesting? That's great. Well, I mean, maybe I've been praying for a different Dan or somebody. I thought it was Dan. Okay.
No prayers are wasted.
They're never wasted. Okay, who else needed to share before we bring this thing to a close? Dan, have you ever been in any kind of 12-step group before?
I went to a couple AA meetings several years ago, and at the time I struggled with the idea, recognizing a higher power. But now I think I'm ready to do that.
Okay.
But that seemed to have been a linchpin to recovery. And if you didn't recognize a higher power, then it wasn't going to work for you.
Yeah.
That's the way I understood it. So
Sure.
Kind of dropped out.
Okay. Well, we also have the Hitting Bottom and UA meeting on Thursday, and it's really a beginners group for people hitting bottom and under earners anonymous. So you're sure welcome to come to that. It's not
I
about
plan
drugs.
to come to all the meetings. I
great.
want to get serious about this because, if I don't, alcohol is going to destroy my life. I mean, it's already producing physical consequences. I think I have alcoholic polyneuropathy, which the ring finger and the pinky finger on my left hand are numb all the time now.
Okay.
Because the myosin sheathing on the nerve has been worn off from, toxicity that my liver has not been able to process because it's being overworked. And and some of my toes on my left foot are numb. And I'm told that could heal. It could resolve if I stop drinking. And but nerves take a long time to heal. So it could be. The doctor said it could be even 3 to 5 years.
Well, I knew guys who are dying from pancreatitis way back when in 2002, and now one of them is working over the Salvation Army in Tampa, and he's a program counselor over there, and it's an amazing thing. I said, "How did you survive that?" He was all blown up with what do you call it, for cirrhosis of the liver and pancreatitis and all that kind of stuff. You get well if you come and quit drinking and start following God. You'll get better. You'll get better.
My doctor, she conducted a blood panel, and she said you have hypothyroidism and your liver enzymes are off the charts.
Yeah.
She said you really need to quit drinking or you're going to kill yourself.
Yeah. Well, you're in the right place. You're in the right place. This is where you come. We know all about alcoholism and drug addiction and sex addiction and under earning and under being, and you're definitely where you need to be, Dan. So welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, well,
Okay, anybody else? Charlie, you need to share again to kind of wrap up your day with us.
George, I think we're
sure.
pretty close to the end, and I really like Eric. I could talk forever, but it wouldn't say anything. So I'm happy where we are, and I want to thank you again. And for Dan's benefit too, for me, the key to this whole thing of life is these little groups There are a number of them that I'm a part of, and maybe I can help some of the guys there from now and then with a thought or something.
Yeah.
But the main thing is that every time I attend one of these sessions, it helps me.
Absolutely. Well, just by being here, you make a difference, Charlie. Just by showing up,
Absolutely,
you bring your years of love of God and all that. One of the things I was thinking about, you offered to pay for my for a trip to Dallas, Texas. I'm saying, well, the guy I'd like to see come to the meeting. See, there's no That Man Is You meeting here in Tampa. They're all in Houston area. But I said, if you wanted to start a That Man Is You outreach, you might want to think about Andrea down in Bolivia and pay for his ticket to Houston. And he's a Roman Catholic guy, and he's coming back to God. So anyway, he's a sweet guy. He's in our meetings in our meetings on Mondays and Thursdays. And
George, I could do the thing I mentioned to you pretty easily because we've got some Southwest points, but I'm in a financial bind right now because of my son, as you probably know a little bit about that, and so I'm just not in a place to be able to provide
I'm praying for you
much
all the
money
time.
to everybody. So
Well,
thank you.
I'm declining your offer to come to Houston because it wouldn't really work for me because there's no That Man Is You meetings here, and
no problem.
Yeah,
Again, the reason George that is not because it was something that would really do something for you, but except this is an opportunity, a program that's been around for a long time, just to get these kind of little groups started.
Yeah.
The guys who have a problem like Dan does, or are facing a situation like Dan's mentioned, that AA and all those things are there, but there's an awful lot of people who don't have that alcohol or drugs or whatever thing that are just as messed up on themselves and things as anyone else. And so this process is there for everybody. So,
well, Charlie, anyway, I really do appreciate it. I mean, we'll see if Jeffrey can bug me, and I may still use your Southwest points right now. I told my wife, and she's she's kind of a little more conservative Bible thumper type person. Well, I don't know. You got some Roman Catholic thing over there. I said, well,
we'll talk about it later, George.
Well, I did Cursillo and Kairos and all these things with Roman Catholics.
Yeah, you've already been there.
I've never been shanghaied into the Church of Rome yet, and I think I can manage. Anyway,
that's not the point of it, but anyway.
I know. I love you, Charlie. Well, thank you. So anyway, Eric, we'll go ahead and we'll let you read out the script. James is not here. And once again, Doug, welcome. I got your phone number, and I'll put it in my phone, and I'll make sure I text you a link to these videos, and we'll go ahead and close this thing out.
Okay, and my name's Dan, not Doug, but.
Oh, did I say Dan? I meant to say Dan. I got written Dan down here. Maybe
I thought I heard Doug. Maybe you did say Dan. I don't know.
I probably had just a senior moment there, but yeah, Dan. I got your name here. Okay, great. Okay, well, go ahead. So, we have meetings on Monday. We have the Nothing book. Tuesday we have gratitude, and Thursday we have the hitting bottom and UA meeting. And I'm going to go to the gym after this, and then I'm going to come back and work on my book some more. I've got supper already cooked. I cooked a bunch of beans and stuff, and since I didn't eat it all up over the weekend, I've still got some beans left. I'm getting ready to cook my Christmas lamb shoulder roast, leg of lamb, and so I'm excited about that. Share actions.
Well, I got some phone calls to make and Christmas preparations, and then I have a meeting this evening, AA meeting.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of things going on for Christmas too, and I'm really looking forward to Wednesday. We've got some triplets. We have a friend who has triplets, and they're seniors in high school, and they're coming over to make cookies. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
It's exciting. That's great. Okay. Anybody else want to share actions you're going to take?
I just moved. This is Dan, by the way. I just moved to Norway, Michigan. It's a town in the Upper Peninsula. Population 2,800, and so I'm getting to know my neighbors, and because I don't really know anyone here at all. and I'm unpacking moving boxes still. And I found out the movers lost a lot of my things, some of which I kind of missed dearly, like remote control to my TV. So I missed a bunch of football games this weekend, and so I went out and got a universal remote this morning. So I have to set that up. But some of the things they lost, I don't know how they could have. Like they lost a 28-foot extension ladder, and then like an 8-foot ladder, and I don't know how they managed to do that. But and all the boxes are all smashed up and everything. So I'm sorting through all that stuff, trying to put my life back together again that way.
Okay, thank you. In closing, Eric, please.
Right. In closing, the opinions expressed here today are strictly those of the individuals who gave them. The things you have heard here are spoken in confidence and should be treated as confidential. We do not take outside the meeting who we hear at the meeting. If you try to absorb what you have heard, you are bound to gain a better understanding of the way to handle your problems and begin to change your life. Talk to each other, reason things out with someone else. Let there be no gossip or criticism of one another, but only love, understanding, and companionship. Now, please unmute, and all who care to, join us in the we version of the St. Francis prayer.
Lord, makes a child thy peace.
That
That where there's hatred, we bring love. That where there's wrong, we may bring the spirit of forgiveness. That where there's discord, we may bring harmony. That where there's error, we may bring truth. That where there's doubt, we may bring faith. That where there's despair, we may bring hope. That where there's shadows, we may bring light. That where there's sadness, we may bring joy. Lord, grant to may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For as by self-giving that one finds, it is by forgiving that one is forgiven, it is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Amen.
All right.
Bless you guys, and you all take care. And Dan, I'm just for a second, I'm just making sure I got your number written down. Okay, I got it correctly. So 8383. Okay, I got it. So I'll text you the correct sign in for tomorrow, and I'll also send you a link to this video once we get it going. Thank you, Charlie. You want to say something, Charlie? You're muted.
Might not be here next Monday because we're going to be in Denver, and I'm not sure what's going to be going on up there.
Well, but I'll be here Monday, even though it's going to freeze in Tampa on Monday, and it never freezes here. But it'll be freezing on Monday. I'm just kidding. I'll be here with bells.
No, wait a minute. This next Monday I will. It's the Monday after that I'll be gone. Okay. I'll see you next Monday.
Okay.
Thank you, George.
Yeah, you're welcome. Did you want to say any more, Dan? Talk some more?
No, just thank you for welcoming me to the group, and I look forward to the next meeting.
Okay, and it's McGuire, MCGUIRE. Is that McGuire?
Correct. Yes, MCGUIRE.
And so, what are you doing up in? What's the name of what town is it you're in?
It's called Norway, like the country.
Yeah.
And it's in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Norway, Michigan. And what are you doing up there?
I just moved here. I'm not working right now. I'm just unpacking stuff. And
so, what kind of work did you move up there for? Work?
No, I was planning on retiring, but I don't know if I have enough money to last for that. So I might go back to work. I was just reading up on Social Security yesterday and figuring out how much I'd be getting every month, and whether that's taxed by.
So how old are you?
61.
Okay, 61. 61 is a little bit early because it's more money if you work a little longer. What kind of work have you done?
I was working as a paralegal. I actually worked with Eric at a couple of big law firms over the years, and I first met him at Berkeley. I was a student there, so was he.
Okay, you were there at Berkeley. Did you study philosophy like he did?
Yeah, history and philosophy.
And
they didn't have double majors at the time. So I just majored in history, but I took a fair number of philosophy courses also.
Are you married?
No, I'm divorced. I was married for 13 years, and then I met another woman, and we were engaged, and that fell apart probably because of the drinking and the drugging. Right. Both of us were drinking and snorting cocaine and stuff like that. And
so you're still drinking, right? Is that what you're saying?
No, not now. I mean, but I just quit recently, and I relapsed a couple times, but I'm not drinking today.
Okay, and have you found an AA group up there in Norway, Michigan yet?
I've been looking around. This place is so remote. Well, the short answer is yes, but the long answer is yes, but it's like 11 miles away. And we've had so much snow here. I mean, you don't see cars here. Everyone drives four-wheel drive pickup trucks because I don't think you'd be able to drive a car up here with all the snow.
Sure. Yeah, I understand.
So it's too
Absolutely.
dangerous. Yeah. And I don't know if I want to drive through heavy snow. Like we had a whiteout the other day, and
Sure.
I don't want to drive 22 miles there and back to an AA meeting. And
Well, you
I
can
need to call them too. I called yesterday and nobody answered, but I need to make sure that they even still exist.
Well, you can do all these meetings online. You can do a lot of AA meetings online. You can get on this UA meeting stuff. You can work UA and you also get your recovery through UA just by dealing with it. Work the steps in the UA meeting. But you come to these meetings and I'll be praying for you and you'll be fine. You'll get well if you have a desire and a willingness to hit bottom.
Mm-hmm. I think I've hit bottom several times, but I'm just kind of tired of hitting bottom.
Have you surrendered to God?
Yeah, I have now. The physical manifestations of the alcoholism are kind of scary. When your doctor shows you your hypothyroidism is expressed with declining testosterone, like precipitously declining, and liver enzymes going the opposite direction. And then I told you about the polyneuropathy, the numbness in my hands and feet. That's kind of scary.
Well, okay, I'll be praying for you. And you just keep coming back, Dan. You'll be fine. Just keep coming back. Listen to what we're telling you. We go over the steps tomorrow, and then Critics of the World. They're the same as the AA 12 steps. It's the same process. You let go absolutely. You surrender your will and your life to God, and let Him manage your life.
That's the plan.
Okay, buddy. You take care.
Thanks,
I'll talk to you soon. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.